Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Imran Daniel bin Azmi and my matric number is 1222105. So our question today is on strict liability on question 21. So the question is, Selamat Industri Sdn Berhad had been operating a plywood factory on leased land since 2005, and in 2019 part of the adjacent land was sold to developers who built residential houses. In 2020, Falik bought one of the houses, the rear garden of which was next to the factory. In order to complete a large order, the factory had to work late at night since early 2018. The noise prevented Falik's wife from getting sleep at night. Last week, the wood dust extraction equipment of the factory malfunctioned and blew dust over Falik's garden. It ruined all the rare orchids planted by Falik in the garden. So the question is, discuss the liabilities of Selamat Industries Sdn Berhad in the above situation. So the first issue in this case is whether the noise from Selamat Industry that prevented Falik's wife from getting sleep at night amount to nuisance. So nuisance can be defined as an act of interference with, disturbance of or annoyance to a person in the exercise or enjoyment of his ownership or occupation of land, or of some easement, profit, or other right used or enjoyed in connection with land. There are three types of private nuisance. The first one is statutory nuisance, second, public nuisance, and third is private nuisance. In this case, it was a private nuisance. This is because private nuisance appears when a person doing on his own land something which he is lawfully entitled to. However, his conduct becomes a nuisance when the consequences of his acts are not confined to his own land, but extend to the land of his neighbor. There are three types of private nuisance. The first one is causing an encroachment on his neighbor's land. Second, causing physical injury to his neighbor's land or building or vegetation. The third one is unduly interfering with his neighbor in comfortable and convenient enjoyment of his land. So the first element in proving private nuisance is unlawful interference with someone's interest in land. So in proving unlawful interference with someone's interest in land, there must be unreasonable conduct from the defendant. For example, in the case of Tunku Norella Suryani binti Tunku Yusuf and Kumpulan Suimas. In this case, the court held that the action of frequent open burning of prayer offering that caused ash and smoke to blow into neighboring houses was a private nuisance by interfering with their quiet enjoyment of their land. Also, in the case of Halsey and Esso Petroleum, the defendant introduced a night shift. The boiler in the depot carried noise throughout the night and prevented the claimant to sleep. Plus, the oil tankers came and went every night. So the court in this case held that the defendant were liable for nuisance because of the noisy vehicles outside claimant's house was an unreasonable use of the highway. Thus, the defendant was liable for nuisance. So for the second element in proving private nuisance is balance of right. Balance of right basically means every person has the right to use their land as they please and their neighbor has the right not to be interfered with. Unreasonable is based on the reasonable person and what ordinary give and take limits are. For example, in the case of Syarikat Perniagaan Selangor Sdn Berhad and Fahrul Rozi Mohdi, the appellant in this case built an open stage and staged some shows He also opened a discotheque on his land. The court in this case held that people who live in town area must be prepared to accept a lot of noise from their neighbors, and he himself may make noise. However, no one has the right to create excessive noise. Similarly, a person is not required to tolerate an excessive level of noise. Also, for extra sensitivity, in the case of Ong Kong Ho and Perbarenan Bandar, the appellant purchased a penthouse. After the occupation, the appellant can hear the banging sound persistently from the water pump located above the penthouse. So the defendant in this case contended that no one complained about the noise except the plaintiff. So the court held that it reasonable to hear the banging sound since the water pump was above the penthouse. It was reasonable to expect that the plaintiff was the one most affected by the banging sound which too much to bear for anyone. Thus the nuisance was constituted. For the extra sensitivity, the law of nuisance is not sympathetic to a plaintiff who is extra sensitive. Neither the sensitivity is related to the plaintiff himself or to his property. At the same time, the sensitivity will not deprive the plaintiff from obtaining the remedy once the nuisance is established. For the application, the noise from the factory at night is unreasonable conduct from the selamat industry because of its continuation and interference with the use of enjoyment of Falik's land. It also reasonable to expect that the noise that since the land is next to the factory, so they are recurrently affected by the noise. The operation of factory during the nights was also unreasonable use of land because no one is expected to tolerate with excessive noise. Even though only Khalid's wife was prevented to sleep at night because of the noise, however, when the nuisance was established, so the sensitivity will not deprive the Khalid's wife from obtaining the remedy. Thus, unreasonable continuation of noise constitute actionable nuisance. So, for the conclusion, Islamic industry is liable under nuisance since the interference by noise has been proven and Islamic industry conduct was unreasonable. Therefore, Khalid's wife can claim under nuisance for the interference of enjoyment towards the land. So, for the defense, Islamic industry can argue about the interest of land when a person who not has any interest of the land cannot make claim under nuisance. In the case of Malone and Lasky, the claimant lived next door to a businessman which used heavy machinery. She lived with her husband who was allowed to live in the property because he was a manager employed by the business. In the property law term, he was a licensee. One day, the vibration from the machinery next door causes a toilet system to fall and injure the claimant. The court in this case refused the claim of nuisance from the wife because she lacked of property interest in the property, thus the tort was unavailable to her as a claimant. So next, we moving to the second issue.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Haziq bin Muhammad Rasul. My metric number is 1222103. 1222103. Alright. So we are going through the issue 2 of this question, which is the issue 2 is whether Selamat Industries Sendirian Berhad is liable for strict liability by causing the damage to Falik's garden. So, what is actually the strict liability? Strict liability is a liability without fault. There are five elements of strict liability. First is dangerous thing, which is the thing can be considered as dangerous and can be foreseen to cause damage to the plaintiff. Next is intentional storage, which is the defendant keeps and collects the thing, or the other word is the defendant accumulate the thing and then causing damage to the plaintiff. Next is non-natural use of land, which is the defendant bring something in his land with extraordinary use that will cause damage to the plaintiff. Next is escape of the thing that causes damage, which is the thing escape from the defendant's place, which is he has full control and of authority over it, over the place. So next, lastly is foreseeability of the damage, which is the dangerous thing can be foreseen that can cause damage to the plaintiff. So we are going through one by one, which is if which is if the five elements fulfill in this case. Uh, Sorry, if all the elements fulfill in this case, that will be constitute as strict liability. If it lacks one element, so it will not become strict liability. So first is dangerous thing. In the case of Ang Hock Tan against Tan Sam Lee and another, plaintiff and defendant live in the shop house where the plaintiff live at the upper floor and the defendant is at the ground floor. The defendant did repair and distributed tires and also keeping the petrol inside the house. The house then burned and caused death to the plaintiff's wife and child. The court held that even though there was no negligence, but keeping the petrol is dangerous and must keep it safe. The defendant then liable for strict liability. So, the application applying to the present case, which is now, the wood dust is considered as dangerous thing because what? Because it can affect Falik and his wife's breathing system or their health system. All right, and also affecting Falik's garden as mentioned in the facts of the case. So, the elements of dangerous thing is fulfilled. Next is intentional storage. So, what is the case? In the case of Miles against Forest Rock Granite Co. Ltd., the defendant used explosives to blast some rocks on his land. The rock then fell and causing injury to plaintiff. The defendant was liable for strict liability. So, what is the application? Application is applying from that, the factory basically accumulate the dust from the malfunctioning wood dust extraction equipment and then escapes from their land, causing damage to Falik's garden. Meaning that the factory has accumulate the thing, which is the thing is the dust. All right, and then it escapes and causing damage to Falik's garden. So, uh, intentional storage was fulfilled in this case. Next is non-natural use of land. In the case of Reed against J. Lyons and Co. Ltd., inspector of munitions injured when a shell manufactured at the defendant's factory where she was employed. It exploded and caused her substantial injuries. The defendant was not liable as there was no escape. All right. So applying from that, it is contrary from the present case because the factory fails to exercise their standard of care by not assuring whether the equipment is in good condition or not, which leads to be malfunction. It then becomes non-natural use of land, which is the failure of their equipment constitute damage to Falik's garden. So, with the way they are not exercising their standard of care carefully or well, uh, so uh, it will be considered as non-natural use of land. Or another word is they bring something in his land with extraordinary use, not an ordinary. So we're gonna put that non-natural use of land fulfilled in this case. So next is escape. So what is the case? In the case of Crowhurst against Amersham Burial Board, the defendant's ewe leaves extended into the plaintiff's land. The plaintiff's horse then died after eating that leaves because it was poisoned. So, from the view of present case, the dust extracted from the malfunctioning equipment had been escaped from the factory and blew over to Felix Garden and damaging it. So, if the thing, which is in this case, is the dust escape from the factory, so it will be one element of strict liability because it was escape. Okay, not anymore the factory's full control and authority. So the element of escape is fulfilled in this case. So the final element is the foreseeability of the damage, whether we can foresee the damage. All right. So in the case of Cambridge Company against Eastern Counties Leather PLC, the plaintiff had a borehole to extract water for supply. They found that their borehole was contaminated by chlorine that came from the defendant's operation of tanning leather. The House of Lords held that it was unforeseeable that the spillage would spread and cause damage to the plaintiff. So, applying to the case, okay, the case is contrary to the present one due to the wood dust that actually can affect health system and Felix Garden, which is it is we can foreseen it. All right, we can which can be foreseen as the dangerous thing likely to cause damage, because earlier we said about the dangerous thing, which is the wood dust can affect the breathing system. So we can actually foresee because it is dangerous. So we're gonna take foreseeability of the damage is also fulfilled in this case. All right, so with all five elements in this case, elements of strict liability has been fulfilled in this case. So the conclusion is we're gonna put that with fulfillment of all elements of strict liability, Slamat Industries is fine liable for tort. All right. So does Slamat Industries has uh, a defense for the action? All right. So defenses for strict liability. We conclude that Selamat Industries Sdn Berhad can only plead for defenses regarding consent to the plaintiff only. All right. So why we say that? Okay, based on this consent to the plaintiff, uh, the consent will be by impliedly, which is the plaintiff did aware about the thing or the damage or the foreseeability of the damage. All right, all the five elements. All right, but did not complain. Okay, about the thing. Right, did not complain about it. So it can constitute as the plaintiff has give consent to that action. All right. So in the case of Sheikh Amin bin Saleh against Chop Hapsang, in this case, plaintiff owned 8 terrace land and 4 of them rented by the defendant for the purpose of bakery. All 8 houses were destroyed by fire caused by the defendant's negligence. Defendant was held not liable because the plaintiff know of that fact. So, because of the plaintiff know of that fact, which is it is impliedly consent. So, the plaintiff will the defendant will not liable. So, that's it from me. Thank you so much, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.